They're experiences that people return from struggling to describe. Experiences where time seems to disappear, where the boundary between themselves and everything else literally no longer exists, where reality feels more real than the world that they left behind. And for decades, people have reported remarkably similar experiences after taking a molecule called DMT. Scientists know that it profoundly changes conscious experiences. What they don't know yet is why so many people return describing patterns that sound strangely alike. Some believe it's simply the brain under extraordinary chemistry. Others believe it may reveal something fundamental about consciousness itself. And the truth is, we candidly don't know. And I think that's where this honest conversation should begin. Not with certainty, but with curiosity. Most people have heard of DMT as a 5 or 10-minute experience, and the one that I just did wasn't, and it's changed my life forever. I volunteered for an extended state research protocol DMT known as DMTX. Instead of briefly touching whatever exists for a few moments beyond ordinary awareness, the experience is sustained for much longer through a controlled infusion. And it's long enough that the experience stops feeling like a flash and it starts constructing what we call reality. It's long enough that your assumptions about yourself truly begin to dissolve. I didn't go in looking for extraterrestrials or aliens. I didn't go looking for another extraordinary story to tell and try to, pop everybody's mind and go viral. I went looking for one thing, the truth. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I found it. And I'll tell you at the end of this video how it all came to life. So there's no other belief that I found. There's no new philosophy that I found. Something that would still be true if every belief disappeared is what I found. And I'm so excited to share it with you today. I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought I was prepared for this, and I wasn't. I remember when I got out, I was like, what the hell am I gonna start talking about? Within moments, as I got into it, the room disappeared. My body disappeared. Time disappeared. I had thought I died. Then when the person I had spent my entire life believing I was disappeared, tell you what, a little wild. I became completely convinced that it was over. There was one thing that remained that brought me back every time. Something was still aware, kind of getting tingles thinking about it right now. And that single realization has changed every conversation that I've had about life, death, love, God, and what our purpose is to be human. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened. I'll separate what I directly experienced from what I later came to believe it meant, because those two things are not the same thing. We'll walk through the experience itself, the moment I thought I died, the strange world that unfolded around me, the moment I became something like a living cell, the moment I looked at my wife and no longer saw only the woman I loved, but what I felt was an entire universe looking back at me. This is why we fall in love so much. And finally, the one realization that stayed with me longer than anything else, that perhaps the greatest miracle wasn't hidden inside the experience. Perhaps it's always been waiting inside of a single conscious breath. And because of this, I've come to believe something very simple. We cannot experience what we are not open to. So let's get into it. So it was a normal Tuesday and I flew to Denver, Colorado. Two amazing souls were at a house that I ventured to that was about 30 minutes away from my hotel. I found this experience through no accident, through a sequence of events, and somebody's like, hey, you need to meet Chase Hughes. And I got on a text message with him. Then all of a sudden, I got connected with these beautiful people. And this was before his Joe Rogan experience came out. So he didn't have a ton of demand at the time, but I remember I reached back out to him and I said, hey, I got recharged by the Joe Rogan experience because I heard all these things that Chase had gone through. And I asked them, and so of course they had a waiting list super long, but I was able to secure an appointment and I went out there. And I remember when I met them, it was inside of their house. And so I walked in, I sat down, we did a little bit of an intake. And they asked me what my expectations were. I said I didn't have any. Or when I got deeper in the experience, I had quite a few. I didn't want to have any. I wanted to let go. I knew that if I had some, that I would be trying to control an outcome. So I thought I was calm, but I was nervous. I had to pee about every 10 minutes. Okay. And I remember going down into the basement and they had this cool room and lasers that I didn't really understand what lasers were at the time. And they started to tell me about them. And then I remember we sat down and they put the IV in. They couldn't get the first one to take. It was like everything was so sequentially timed for me to start at 11:11, which was even more wild because they put the IV in and didn't take the first time. So they had to move it to another spot and it took perfectly. They started the pump And I was like, I'm ready to go. Of course, still nervous. And started the pump, and that pump wouldn't work. So they get a new pump. And literally the minute they started it, it was 11:11. The first sensations that I had, my breath started speeding up. That had nothing to do with the DMT. That had everything to do with me just mildly freaking out. As calm as I was attempting to be, it was mildly freaking out. All right. I had a blindfold on. And if you've ever done DMT before, or any psychedelics, you'll all of a sudden start seeing patterns. It first started looking like straight line fractal geometry. Then it started turning into, if you've ever seen like the Mandelbrot set, it started turning into that. And it was all these beautiful colors, every color that I could possibly imagine, all with my eyes closed. Then it went into, all of a sudden those patterns started to mold themselves into perfect shapes. And the shapes had really clean lines. And if I were to describe it, it kind of looked like, I don't even know, like the artist per se, but you have like Alex Grey. It was different than Alex Grey. It was like these very beautiful, almost like Incan, Aztec, like cave paintings, but like very, very vivid and very precise. And inside of every one of those, it was like Quetzalcoatl and all of these different gods started popping up, indigenous type of like gods from different places. And I was seeing Indian gods. I was seeing from Egypt. I was seeing from Inca. I was seeing Aztecs. I was seeing all of these gods that were coming up, and all their eyes were closed. And then the eyes opened up. When their eyes opened up, it was Sophia's eyes that I was looking into. And as I looked into her eyes, every time I would look deeper into her eyes, another eye would unfold and it would open up even more. And I just kept seeing her eyes, and they would bat and the universe would stop. And then when they would open back up, the light came back on again and the universe would start again. I wanted to hold the eye open because I didn't want the universe to stop. But every time it would close, a new universe would emerge itself. It made me think about me opening and closing my eyes. What happens when the universe gets set and reset again? Then what started to take place is I went through this other portal. I don't know how to even describe it, but it's like my body inverted and turned back around. And then when I was staring at, all of a sudden the whole world became like claymation. It was almost like a really well-designed, like Gumby world, but it all became claymation. And I could go in and I could form anything that I wanted. I could form a building, I could form a human, I could form a dog, a horse, anything along those lines. And so I was now forming realities, and I started attempting to form things that were not of this world. And I was still aware of my body at the time. And then my ego started to take over. Like, look at all these things that I could build. And I was in awe of everything that I was creating. So it looked like this world, but in a very claymation, like three-dimensional space. And so I was just molding and creating. And I was experiencing this life. And then I was like, wow, I'm really good at this. And then my body dropped away. My body just dissipated. I lost my body, I lost time, and I lost my identity. I don't know how long it was. The facilitator said it wasn't that long, but I stopped breathing. And I felt like I stopped breathing for lifetimes. I thought it was over. And I wasn't scared. I was actually in the most beautiful place of peace. And then I started experiencing this light. But it wasn't light as we see it in this room. It was another version of light. It was like light and dark together in this really peaceful bliss. And it kind of reminded me of just like a line, like a flat line. I heard it more than I saw it. And so I just heard this just hum in this peace, and I felt it. And I felt all potential that could have existed out of that very moment. There were no more feelings anymore. There was no more scared. There was no more hope. There was just a calm, a surrender. Everything was perfect. So one thing that came up for me is that I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of losing the person that I thought I was and walking back into this world. How was I going to define life? How was I going to be a husband? How was I going to be a father? If this is what peace looks like, then what else matters? Then I breathed. I took a breath. And I remember that breath was like all of life entering myself again. And I had reset myself in that breath. About to cry thinking about that. I remember taking the eye mask off. And it was like I wanted to see the new world that I was in. And it was the same people, same things, but with a different energy, a new vibrancy. So I opened my eyes, and what I started to see was that I could see the cells and the vibration and everything around me. I could see the geometry of the world that I was in. All of a sudden, I would open and close my eyes, and nothing changed. I'd close my eyes, and I could see right through them. I could open my eyes, and I could see the same thing. I remember I could see behind me, around me, in front of me, all at the same time. And it was no longer seeing, it was hearing, feeling, experiencing, and being a witness to the entire vibration of everything. I remember I took a deep breath in, closed my eyes, and I expanded and connected with my wife, who was all the way in Texas at the time. And I could connect with her and I could feel what she was going through. I could feel her pain. I could feel her happiness. I could feel her sadness. I could feel her history. I could feel everything that she'd ever gone through. And I remember I infused myself into all of it with all of the love and breath that I could go into. And so and this was all between one breath and another breath, mind you. So then I took another breath and I breathed in again. And then I went throughout my entire childhood. And I started witnessing myself and everything that I had been, but not in like a story timeline. It would have been the equivalent of looking at myself in like a 4-dimensional space, to where I see my entire timeline literally in one capsule. Then what happened is that I saw myself iterated in all the potentials of every other capsule that could have existed. So what would life have looked like this, like that? But what if my name was something else? It was just like infinite over and over and over again. And I saw it's like all of these pills, so like I was in a pill, but it was like baby to death. And then I saw it in every iteration of myself. And I saw myself poor. I saw myself rich. I saw myself as a king. I saw myself as a slave. I saw myself as a prisoner. And I loved every single version of it. And then I chose that. Then I went back in another breath and I chose this very timeline again. But then I saw everything that I was pulling in from other timelines that were now appearing in these experiences that were creating a bifurcation of the divine man that I could be, that I had not become. In between breaths, time would disappear. And in this window, I had stopped trying to understand anything anymore. I stopped trying to put my egoic mind on the experiences that I was having, and I just watched. I just embodied. And then I took another breath again. So then I had this recognition that dropped in about what my purpose was in this life. And what came to me is that my purpose as a man here on this earth is to be a warrior and a protector of the womb of the woman. That inside of her womb, this is what came to me, is the Ark of the Covenant, is all the secrets and the truth of the universe, that when honored, all life can be created. Once I witnessed that, I then saw her show up in my life. And inside of her eyes was the entire universe. And it was a mirror of me that was completing me. And it made me understand marriage and the fact that, you know what, I know why we get divorced so much, because we can't hold the sovereignty and the beautifulness and the magnificence of that type of container. To be able to guard and hold and protect and create safety and somatic surrender inside of the womb of a woman so that she can connect divinely to everything in her life. I'm telling you that that's what marriage is. 99.99999% of us are getting it wrong. So for me, I then understood my purpose on this earth. And it's not to be in servitude to her, it's to be a protector and a guardian so that she can find that somatic surrender, that she can feel the womb and create from here. And then what took place were deep tears. And the tears started to fall inside of myself because I had this recognition that there was all this shame that I had felt for the type of man that I had showed up as that wasn't protecting, honoring that portion. Because here's the thing, if I protect this womb, what kind of man am I? What kind of man am I who creates so much safety inside of the nervous system of a woman, whether it's my mom, my sister, or my wife, whoever it might be, that I'm able to show up and not try to chase and sleep with every woman on earth, right? That I am such a still man that other men want to emulate the person that I show up as. That I could be in a room of beautiful women that try to come at me and tell every single one of them no, because you know what? Because I love my wife and I love myself and I know that my dick matters, right? The way I show up in life matters. The way that I protect this space in her womb matters. And these two things that create life, we just put them inside of pornography and then we chase after them. And we become so disconnected from the creation mechanism of ourselves. So that was this piece. Okay, that was a whole lot right there. And what I realized is that I had an egoic version of love. It was a grasping, a controlling aspect of love, a definition that I had been handed over time by my parents and movies. And that whole definition dissolved, okay? To be in love is to be in coherence. And it starts with myself. And once I became in coherence with myself, it's very easy to love anybody else. And then you see everybody as part of you. And then, yes, you have one person that's connected with you so that, free love doesn't mean placing your energy everywhere. It means placing your energy in one, and then it expands out so everybody can feel it. I didn't surrender because I understood. I surrendered at this moment in time because I loved. And that took me to the next level. The next level that I phased into is where in between each breath, I saw how all of humanity was created. It first came in a funny moment where I was like, wow, my armpit started to stink because I was sweating. And I was like, wow, I, took a moment to partake in the smell of this. And as I partook in the smell, I was like, man, I need some deodorant. And then I was like, wow, I put on deodorant this morning, but that one didn't work. And so now I see why a whole industry of deodorant was birthed off of me holding my breath. And then that put me down a path of understanding that all of life in the way that we've constructed it is from an anticipation to breathe again. And so we brace ourselves and we create podcasts. We brace ourselves and we create furniture. We brace ourselves, we create deodorant. We brace ourselves in an orgasm, we create life. We brace ourselves and we create food. It's all from an anticipation. The anticipation is the bracing of ourselves. And then when we breathe again, we become present. And the brace is looking at the time of the past and the potential of the future and what we've hoped for and hoped what we wouldn't do again, or what we could repeat again and then set it into the future. And inside of that, that's an entire anticipation of creating vacations, creating repeatable experiences. And that's all beautiful. But every one of those experiences that's outside of the fringes of the present moment is an anticipation, and we are not present. And then that took me down the path of saying, okay, all I have to do is breathe. And every time I would breathe, I would say, okay, well, then if I breathe, well, where's God? And I started searching for God, and it kept bringing me back to the breath again. And then I had this conversation with the divine, with God. And inside of that conversation that I had, it was literally time had folded onto itself. And God said to me, let me die. God said to me that the way that you have personified me to exist is your ego seeking a bigger version of yourself when you were perfect. It was to let go of what I have been told that God is so I can actually fully receive God, the divine, whatever we want to call it. And when I allow that to shower over me, and all I have to do is be in gratitude in this present moment in every breath, now all of a sudden, everything becomes part of me as God intended for it to be. And I cried and I laughed. But what I felt in that moment was a paradigm shift of a knowing that I would never let go of, that I didn't need to go and try to explain this thing. But if I did, that I would do it from a space of presence and deep gratitude. So then I started to kind of come back to things, to the room. I was still in it, and it became very normal for me. It became just like a remapping of my brain and what I could witness. So I was like, you know what? I want to see these beings that they talk about. So this was the interesting part. I started to look for these entities, and I started asking them where they were. And I heard this massive laughter, and then I started laughing with it. Every time I say this, to get chills again. I started laughing at it. They started laughing with me and at me, and they said, what are you doing? Why are you trying to make us show up in a dimension that we don't live in? You're trying to put us into space and time, and we don't function that way. They said anytime that somebody has attempted to manifest us into this reality, it is because it's their imagination taking the construct of another dimension and placing it across this time and space that we are in, and then making the big-eyed grays or the insectoid or whatever it might be. We have a very specific frequency and a sound that we move in that is beyond what you can hear, experience, and see and touch. And sometimes we will drop in just to show you that we exist, but seeking us out only pushes us further away. And we have always been here. And what came to me was that we are all evolved. They are in other dimensions as an evolved-ish version of us. And when we can tap into that frequency, which we all can without DMT, all of us can do this. And in future videos, I will show us how to do this. So make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you get the future updates, okay? But we can tap into them at any time because they are part of us. They live outside of the visual spectrum of light, the electromagnetic field that we experience. And they are through the laws of thermodynamics. They are inside of radiation. They move across the ultraviolet field. They are all over the place. And there are different entities in each one of those that have a very specific purpose in the ether, in the plasma, and things that we can't touch or feel or see or taste or sense. And that was the last revelation that I had inside of this. I kept going in a cycle looking for more things, and I kept coming right back to the breath. What came out of it for me was that there's one thing that we have to do in this life, one thing to be in purpose of what we're to do, and then we will receive everything. And I'm going to do it right now. All you have to do is take one deep breath and be in deep gratitude, ever-present gratitude in every breath that you take. What'll start to happen when you do this is you realize how much you're not breathing. You realize how much you're not in gratitude. And you realize how good it feels to get back into that breath and breathe and allow the divine to shower over you all the time. The miraculous things that have come because of this is, the other day I was like leaning into a tree, it wrapped around me and started rubbing my face. I know that sounds bananas, but it happened. And other people saw it happen. I have slept better, felt better, loved better. I went back into my business and I was non-negotiable about life. I was all about accountability and no longer being the savior in anybody else's world and just being present and speaking the truth. A few things that came up for me that we'll discuss in future videos of Revelations. I am not my story. We are our story. What death really means, right? Death is just the dropping of the ego and expanding infinitely. We can do that right now. So awareness is deeper than personality, and the personality arises out of deep awareness. So are we going to go be aware, or are we going to go be this like personality that's people pleasing and seeking? Go be deeply aware, okay? God is in you and all around you. I say this all the time, but it's so true, and God is inside of that every breath. And the definition of God is not the thing that we thought it was. It is something that showers over you, and when we allow God to die, we free God to exist. We allow God to exist. So there are many more revelations that will come of this. I will continue on this series to just disclose what this looks like. If you have questions, I will answer them here in the comments. And inside of the Miracle Academy, which is our community that we teach, we are imparting this knowledge, this presence, this new way of being, and this new way of life into everything that we do. I welcome you to join. But if you just want to be here for this, just subscribe. I am so honored to be able to share this with you. I'm so honored to be able to open up all of these revelations to you. I'm so honored that you took the time to get to this point in the video. And I just want to say thank you, and I love you.